Well, welcome everybody to this webinar on the Marshall Fire. Today we're hosting this virtual town hall for ag producers, businesses, backyard farmers and ranchers, and other landowners who were impacted by the Marshall Fire on December 30th of this past year, just a few short weeks ago, long weeks ago for many of us. The Marshall Fire, as we all know, damaged or destroyed over 1,000 homes and businesses in Boulder County and burned over 6,000 acres of land. This region also includes many small operations, livestock facilities, and open space that was part of our landowner community in Boulder County. And CDA, the Colorado Department of Agriculture, is also a neighbor to this area with our headquarters in Broomfield. We were evacuated as well, but did not suffer any damage, but our thoughts and ongoing support are with you all and with the victims of the fires who lost so much. CDA has been activated in a support capacity in response to the fire, and we are participating in daily calls about the recovery for the Marshall Fire area. And officials are still assessing the total extent of the damage from the fire, especially as it pertains to livestock and landowner assets, as it pertains to this conversation in particular. And so we'll know more over time. But today, we're joining with our federal and local partners to bring this town hall to anyone who has agricultural practice or property that was impacted by the fire. I'm very pleased to be joined today by representatives from the USDA's Farm Service Agency, as well as representatives from CSU Extension and Boulder Extension Office in particular. We have with us FSA Colorado Executive Director Kent Pepler, FSA Administrator Zach Ducheneau, Adrian Card, Boulder County Extension Agent, and Reagan Adams, CSU Veterinary Extension Specialist and Disaster Preparation and Recovery Expert. That's along with other team members from FSA, Farm Service Agency, who are with us to answer questions today. In just a minute, we will hear from our panelists about the response and recovery efforts, as well as the programs that are accessible to those impacted by the fire. After the overview of the programs from FSA and CSU Extension, we will open the floor to participants to ask questions. To ask your questions, you can use either the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom, which you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you can ask the questions anytime during the town hall, but we'll answer them when we take questions at the end. If after this town hall you need any additional information or help finding resources that you may be eligible for, please make sure to visit Boulder County Disaster Assistance Center, or the DAC, or the DAC, located at 1755 South Public Road in Lafayette. The DAC is open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. You can also call Boulder County Public Call Center at 303-413-7730 if you were impacted by the fire and need information. We will also share more information about the town hall held by the Division of Insurance that could help answer any questions related to filing insurance claims. All of this information from today's webinar will be available on our website at the Colorado Department of Agriculture following this webinar, and you can find that information at ag.colorado.gov. Now, before we begin, I want to especially thank the Boulder County Office of Emergency Management and the State Emergency Operations Center for their quick and decisive response to the fires and their ongoing work during the recovery phase. I also want to thank our CDA team who have been participating in recovery efforts. In particular, I want to thank State Veterinarian Dr. Maggie Baldwin and our Public Information Officer, Olga Roback, as well as other state agencies who are responding to the disaster. So now it is my pleasure to hand the mic over to the State Executive Director for Farm Service Agency, Kent Pepler. Kent is a fourth-generation farmer from Meade, Colorado. Kent, thanks so much for being with us, and over to you.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate the nice introduction. Once we heard about the fire, the FSA, both nationally and in Colorado, responded immediately. And the main goal was to assess damages and reach out to producers to see what we could do for them. We worked with an awful lot of people, and the state staff and the state staff and the local staff worked together to make sure that we were coordinated in our outreach program and provided the necessary support needed for the program implementation. FSA, of course, will be conducting an emergency board meeting. It includes a number of partners and federal and state agencies to review the loss assessments once they're completed. We continue to be in touch with all of our stakeholders and partners, such as Commissioner Greenberg's Colorado Department of Ag and CSU Extension, to ensure that we're communicating and sharing information for a coordinated response. As a result of our preliminary assessment losses, FSA's made direct contact with some of the producers affected, and we'll be conducting we'll be having an emergency board meeting to review more of the assessments. Our loss assessments will assist FSA determining the extent of the damage and to focus on delivering specific programs targeted to those specific losses. Producers, and this is important now for everybody, producers who want to report losses to FSA and for information on our programs should reach out to Jonathan Weishar in our Larimer and Boulder County offices, and his number is 970-295-5665. Again, that's Jonathan Weishar, Boulder County office, 970-295-5665. Our outreach efforts to producers and anybody else that we can help really will continue. And our office, we sure want to ensure that we're getting the information to people for our available programs. And we'll continue to document losses, and we'll sure try to help producers submit applications and hope we get them lined up properly with the programs that they do qualify for. I'm new at my position as State Executive Director. I've been so impressed on how FSA and Colorado Department of Ag have worked together with other agencies and other organizations outside the government sphere to respond to this terrible disaster. And I certainly hope it continues. And we have great support from our national office in DC. And I think the reason we have good support is we have really, really wonderful leadership back there right now. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the administrator of the Farm Service Agency from Washington, DC, Mr. Dak Ducheneau.
Thanks, Kent and Kate. It's really our honor to be here. It's our duty to be here, and just want to share a little story about why we thought it was so important to reach out. When I was the program director at the Intertribal Agriculture Council, we had the Winter Storm Atlas come through in late September, early October, which is really out of the ordinary for South Dakota and in our part of the plains. And just so happened that it was during a government shutdown. A government shutdown when Farm Bill programs had lapsed. So there was really no assistance we could offer producers, but we did have one natural resource conservation state chief who was available to answer the phone and take calls and talk about what could be. And that really helped put a lot of folks at ease. So I thought it was the least we could do to reach out to our friend there, Commissioner Greenberg, and see if there's any opportunity for us to really connect more meaningfully, more personally with the producers after the smoke had cleared a little bit. You know, our hearts, of course, go out to those thousands of people that are displaced, those folks that lost family members and personal belongings. We fully understand that sometimes agriculture is rightfully an afterthought, and this is unfortunately one of those cases when so much human loss has happened. But we wanted to make sure we had a chance to reach out to those who may be engaged in some level of ag production at that county level and let them know that we have some standing programs that are designed to help in situations like this. Prior to the 2008, 2012 farm bills, we really didn't have any standing disaster programs to access during this. So it would almost literally take an act of Congress. When these programs were first authorized, they were funded annually with no as needed funding base. So we would have to take applications now, gather them up throughout the whole year, batch them at the beginning of next year, and then make payments based on how far we could divide the money. We're not in that reality now. But it's important to note that these standing disaster programs are relatively new in the realm of federal assistance that the Farm Service Agency gets to deliver. So they may not be the perfect fit for the production that's happening there. And we really want to stress, even if you don't feel you're eligible, or if you're told you're not eligible by a neighbor or by a well-intentioned county staff member, turn in an application, because this administration is interested in finding out where the gaps still exist in our programs and services so that we can more equitably distribute those programs and services as authorized by Congress. So that if you don't take anything away from my conversation today, besides this, take away, turn in an application, let us know what your losses are so that we can ensure that even if we would have to deny your participation, we can look towards the future and build programs that fit. And I've heard it said that there are a lot of horse enthusiasts and horse industry folks there in that part of the country. We're pushing the boundaries and trying to get more inclusion for horse folks in our programs, because you can see the wall behind me. I'm a horse person too. So, and my rationale is if we can cover sport fish and Christmas trees and ornamental flowers and ornamental fish, there's no reason that we can't help folks that have horses as a business where they're doing some value-added agriculture on their soil. With that, I'll do a quick touch on each of the programs that Mr. Terrazas has shared might be most meaningful, and then have a conversation. And we've got dedicated program staff here to help you. I can't echo Mr. Pepler's sentiment enough that our team has been doing a bang up job all the way across the country as we deal with record number of climate change related disasters, not to mention the global pandemic that's going into its third year. So first and foremost, I heard talk of the folks that lost their livestock, their cattle. Livestock Indemnity Program is one of our standing programs where we can help with up to 75% of the fair market value of livestock that are lost. It's important that producers have documentation or herd records to help us quantify that loss, and we pay for above normal mortality. To take this out of the suburban Colorado community and put it out on the prairie, farmers and ranchers in my part of the country typically have a 90% calf crop. We're expected to deal with, have a plan for that first 10% loss. Anything above that, if it's caused by a weather-related disaster such as this, Livestock Indemnity Program can help. So above normal mortality, 75% of fair market value, which is established with input from the states at the national level. Next is the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish Program, which somehow got the acronym ELAP. That's sort of our catch-all program. When something doesn't fit in one of the other standing programs, it can often find a place there in ELAP. ELAP will help producers with losses due to wildfire, feeding, grazing losses, honeybee, feed, colony, and hive losses, and may be available for losses not covered in other disaster assistance programs like LIP or ECP, which is the last one I'll touch on. And that's our Emergency Conservation Program. And that program is designed to provide cost-shared emergency assistance to producers to help ensure that we're moving towards our goal of conserving our soil resources and conserving our habitat and our ecosystems. It's a cost shared program. If you happen to fit into a historically underserved or socially disadvantaged category, the cost share rates can be higher. We've done a lot of work in the ELAP program and ECP program, specifically broadening them to maximize our flexibility within statute. So again, if some loss that you incurred that you feel is ag related doesn't quite fit, apply anyway so that we know that there's more work to do. And real quickly, I'll touch on the tree assistance program, TAP. That will help owners of orchards, vineyards, and nurseries with cost share assistance towards replanting and rehabilitation of documented losses during a natural disaster. Now with that, it's been my experience that folks tend to learn more from the questions they ask than the spiels that I give. So I'm going to kick it over to Adrian, I think, and then take some questions as we wrap this up. Adrian?
Thank you, Administrator Duchenal. Appreciate it. And really echo your sentiments too. My heart goes out to those who have experienced loss and suffering through this event, unprecedented. And my overarching message to you is to know that Extension stands at the ready to help you in the recovery phase. There's tremendous technical knowledge here in the Boulder County Extension Office to help both with commercial agricultural producers, small acreage, non-commercial property owners, and also residential and retail sites. So keep that in your back pocket. We're going to see a lot of emergence of need in the next couple of months, but want to give you first a snapshot of what I was able to understand through colleagues who've had firsthand view of agricultural losses. So the land that we see mostly impacted in this area is owned by the city of Boulder and by Boulder County and is leased to agricultural producers. And of those two entities, they document 4 of their agricultural tenants that were impacted. All of those 4, either as farmers or as ranchers, had rangeland or pasture losses as the fire burned through, damaging the crowns of those grasses. And they noted, as you remember, as we saw this event unfold, extremely high wind velocities up to 100 miles per hour. They're seeing wind erosion in some of these areas as well. It's important to note that these are really preliminary observations. Most of the ground is still covered in snow. So we still need to get a full melt out before we can see exactly what those conditions are on the ground. One of the producers who was most impacted, he was the one that suffered property losses. He lost 5,000 small bales of grass hay. He lost 10 bulls valued at estimated $3,500 per bull. He lost outbuildings that were owned by the city of Boulder. His residence was not burned. He had equipment losses in terms of trailers and other agricultural equipment. Those appear to be the immediate property losses. There's 16 miles of fence that need to be inspected that those landlords, those city and county landlords own. All told, the initial low-end estimate is at least 1,000 acres of commercial agricultural land was impacted. And again, most of this is in irrigated pasture and in rangeland, dryland areas. What else to share with you? Alluding to those other extension resources in office here, we had a long-time small acreage management coordinator in our office, Sharon Boken, who I believe is in the call today as an attendee. We're rehiring for that position. Sharon retired recently, and we will bring that expertise into the office to help small acreage property owners understand how they may view the impacts to their pasture losses. Really excited to hear Administrator Duchenal talk about the potential expansion of the FSA program to maybe cover these types of landowners. And then further, as we see homes that burned in those intense heat that was generated in the event that those homes are rebuilt and that landscape is destroyed, we have residential landscape experts in the office that can help advise on that as well. With that, my colleague Reagan Adams at Colorado State University, both of us part of the extension unit on campus, has detailed some great online resources that I think she's made available to CDA. And Reagan, will pass over to you for more information. And you're on mute.
Okay. I'll join the choir of sending my condolences to everybody who's been affected, and not just by the, what the fire might have done to your property and your livelihood, et cetera, but also what the fire has done to everybody's psyche, seeing something like that to happen. Extension is really in the business of helping you to prepare for disasters as well as to recover from them. We're with the recovery experts, so I'd just like to share with you the resources. There's a big one that will be on the CDA website called Ready Ag, which was actually produced by our colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania, but it goes into a very deep dive on all the things to think about once this is over, that will prepare you better for the next one. We also have I also put the website of the food systems group and of the agriculture and business management group, which will help you with financing. Finally, I'd just like to reach out and say that there is an opportunity by these awful tragedies for people who were not directly affected, but are thinking about them, to take this moment to think how you would prepare for such a disruption if it happened to you. And when I say that, I know a lot of people go, but where do I start? It's so hard to even think of where I begin. I'd like to suggest to you that you begin by making a communication plan with your family and friends, so that if such a disruption occurs in your life, you can find immediately your family and friends to know how they are, where they are, and that they're hopefully safe. When that happens, when you have that discussion, make that plan, it helps you get into the routine of how you respond in other aspects of your life. So do take this opportunity to do that. You'll feel much better about the whole thing. So with that, it's 1:53 by my watch, and we have 15 minutes or so for questions with our experts. And as I see one in the Q&A, and I'll turn it over to Kate. Are you going to run the questions?
Yep, I'll run questions, Reagan.
Super,
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, well, thanks for being on again, everybody, and everyone out there for joining us. So we've got one question in the Q&A. And Adrian, I might toss this back to you for starters, and Reagan as well. Question if we know of any equine properties that were damaged or destroyed. And then there's also a link in that Q&A to the Colorado Horse Rescue, which has financial assistance available at www.chr.org. So Adrian, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
You bet, Catherine, thanks for making that available. And I don't have a precise inventory to know. The strong assumption is that there were equine properties damaged, whether they were of a commercial equine nature, like stables, I don't know, but would assume that there are small acreage owners in that area. Had a conversation with Sharon Boken previously. We know that they're there. We haven't specifically mapped it out yet. So really great to see that resource available for financial assistance.
Not only the financial, they also have a hay bank at the horse rescue. And so that's very important, because so many these properties have lost their forage for the rest of the winter. And so a hay bank through them is a very generous offering.
Absolutely, thank you both. Our other two chats so far have been about where to find resources. So Marion, as Olga just updated in the chat, we will have all of this updated on our website, ag.colorado.gov, and you'll find lots of helpful links there, many of which the panel today has mentioned. All right, I'm not seeing any other chats out there, but we've still got a few minutes, so I want to make sure that any questions that are simmering, this is a chance to put it out there and see what the panel has to offer. So please do put any questions in the chat or the Q&A. And of course, if you don't have any today, as the panel has iterated many times throughout the last few minutes, we are here to offer continued support across our agencies, locally, at the state level, at the federal level. So this is just an initial touch point, as of course, as the recovery efforts evolve and go underway. We're going to be staying in very close touch with each other and with you all and with our community about the resources that are available. So there will be future opportunities to ask questions and make sure you're getting the answers you need.
Kate, let me join in just saying that since there's a little time, a group of us are developing a webinar series and potentially the opportunity to go and visit places called Ag Ready. And this is focused more on the agriculture, someone who's just started into ag, maybe, you know, a small acreage situation, mixed species, that sort of thing, where we will introduce you to the concepts of what you need to do to prepare your ag business or your ag property. And then hopefully the next step would be that we would walk around your property with you, so that helped you figure out which of your risks were your highest priority and how you would start your emergency management plan. So hopefully that'll be out in a couple of months, and it's a program that's going to be offered across the country, but we certainly will be able to do it in Colorado. So I'll blast that to Adrian, and hopefully we can get to work in preparing Boulder County better the next time.
You bet. Well, also I've added in the chat for everyone the link to the Boulder County Extension website. On that front page, there are links to the Marshall Fire and resources related. And we've put together a guidebook or response document that would be of help to you. So take a look there and see if that's helpful to you.
Great, thanks for that, Adrian. We just have another question in the chat. Is there a process or convening mechanism to look at recovery management practices on public open space or private grazing land? Reagan, can I kick that back to you for starters, or Adrian to run with that question?
Recovery management practices on open space or private grazing land. Casey, can you expand on that? What exactly are you looking for with that?
And maybe while Casey's expanding in the chat, I can also add that I believe we have some of our team on, in addition to Dr. Baldwin and Olga Roback, who I mentioned in the beginning. Les Owen is our Director of Conservation Services at CDA. We've been working on recovery efforts for other wildfires, you know, the ones we're more used to seeing up in that impact our forest lands, BLM lands. So we've been leading, Les has been leading that recovery effort with landowners and producers. Grand County is a great example from the fires last year. That's a role we want to continue playing, especially to help be a vehicle for federal resources to get to local communities. That's one role that CDA is playing. But Adrian, any other thoughts on maybe resources that producers, landowners might have on the sort of land management around recovery?
You bet. Well, I think it's important to note that many of these grass species that were impacted have adapted through fire, that we're going to see loss, that their productive loss will be less in 2022, but they will recover in many instances, not needing to see reseeding. So I think that's before you feel like you need to take action, watch that pasture and just see what regrows. I see Reagan nodding her head there. So
no, it's part of life in the West. It's just when people, their property get in the way, it seems like it shouldn't happen, but in fact, it is part of the land in the West. So have someone from the Boulder Extension office to come walk your property with you and point out some of the positive things that happen with fire and grassland. And I see in the chat that Catherine Gregory from the Horse Rescue has mentioned that she would like to help educate horse owners on how to evacuate and prepare for these disasters. Actually, Sharon Boken, who just retired from Boulder Extension, has done that numerous times. And we can certainly set up those kind of trainings again, because everybody can be reminded. I've been on the animal response calls, and I have to say that everybody involved in that community animal disaster plan has just worked heroically in the last couple of weeks. And it has been wonderful to see. It was a tough fire for pets, but and their owners, but the response to it went quite well. The responders were able to get where they needed to be.
And Kate, important to note another resource in the chat, Vanessa McCracken, who's the manager of the Boulder Valley and Longmont Conservation Districts. She says they've got technical assistance available as well. So.
And I would just add to that, Adrian, that if folks think they may have those type of reseeding or that type of need after the spring, get in there, get familiar with your county office officials, get your farm registered if it isn't, so that you're ready to take advantage of those opportunities when they're needed. Because it typically, in our assistance where we're doing conservation type planning, we're not able to implement that a week after you come in. So get that application process started sooner. It's better to have it in the process and not need it than it is to need it too late for this growing season.
Great, thank you all for that. And there's some good comments in the chat thread as well. Administrator Ducheneau, thank you for putting your contact information in there. Looks like Brandon has put some more contact information in there as well for local FSA resources. So be sure and check out the chat. But again, we'll be posting this information following the webinar. Also a comment from Casey, there are other counties on the Front Range with valuable open space managed as rangeland. How to maintain open space while protecting nearby residential development. It may be too early for lessons learned, but maybe something to be considering now that we're seeing, what we're used to dealing with out in rangeland happening in our suburban communities. Does anybody want to kind of take that and comment on even initial lessons learned? Yep, Administrator Ducheneau.
Sure. 30 years ago, we didn't really know much about a riparian buffer area either. So these things evolve, and the fact that Mr. Davenhill is bringing it up, we can start to think about that urban agriculture intersection, and do we need urban buffer zones to mitigate this type of thing in the future? It's not beyond the realm of possibility that one of our conservation partners out there, our cooperators, is already thinking about that and has some ideas where we can leverage some federal resources alongside theirs to help develop that for a multi-use area. Thanks, Casey. We will take that issue to heart and see if we can build something out.
I think every emergency manager in the country is thinking that same thought. What do we do if this happens to us? There was an article in the Fort Collins, Colorado, and today about Laurie Hodges, the emergency manager, and up in our county, wondering how we would handle that sort of thing. So it vibrates. Lessons learned from every incident that we have.
To add on to what Administrator Ducheneau said, pasture management is changing every day. I read an article about a ranch in Wisconsin that has 7,000 head of cattle on 2,000 acres. They divide it into 5-acre pastures and they move those cattle. And they put 400 pounds on them in 6 months. So, that type of technology, with the help of CSU and with the help of NRCS, is just moving so quickly. And we need to keep Boulder County Open Space and other landlords up to speed on it and work with them on it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kent. Panelists, any final thoughts for our listeners today? Maybe starting Reagan and Adrian, and then Kent and Zach will give you final word today.
If you called me out first, Kate, I would just say, please think about what you would do if this sort of thing happened to you. This is a warning for everybody. Make a plan. As one of my favorite first responders once said, the more prepared an individual is, the more we can help them. So take that to heart, please, and good luck.
Would echo that with Reagan. I think we need to think more about urban and wildland interfaces and defensible space and fire preparedness. And I think, you know, the recovery, like we saw in the county in 2013 with the flood, that was much more devastating in many ways and was a much longer proposition, at least for agricultural lands. We will see how these pastures unfold in the next couple of months, and it's going to be a jog, not a sprint, you know, to solve some of these issues. So.
I would just like to say, and I don't mean to run my mouth all the time, but I would just like to say that let's not forget the human side of this. And if you see a first responder, and I don't care where you live, tell them thank you. I'll tell you, the police and the fire department, the sheriff's department, they saved an awful lot of people in this past fire, and just acknowledge them and say thanks.
And I'd just echo what Mr. Pepler said and the others, you know, have a plan, be ready, think about what that urban and agriculture intersection looks like. And you know, climate change is real. And if we just start addressing climate change 40 years ago, when the first folks started to advocate for it, maybe we wouldn't have 100-mile-an-hour straight line winds 3 times in 1 year in the middle of the country without an accompanying storm. So keep up the good work advocating for climate change mitigation strategies. The administration is hearing it. We want to work with you all to address that, as well as addressing the food system inequities and other realities that we're dealing with. But you all have my email address. Please feel free to use it anytime you think that we can be of some value. And I wish you the best on your recovery, and I hope there's something we can do to help.
Well, Administrator Ducheneau, thank you so much. This was really your brainchild that brought us all here today. And I just want to remind folks how meaningful that is to have your leadership in Washington reaching out directly to us here in Colorado, asking how you can help. And that does not go unnoticed whatsoever by myself, our department, and our community here. So thank you so much to you and your team for taking the time. Panel, thank you so much as well. Kent, Adrian, Reagan, a pleasure having you on. To those of you listening, lots of resources to come. Keep an eye out, keep in touch, and we are here to support you and our communities through this and future events. So have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.